Oak Hill Cemetery was started around 1866 when Aggie Smith was buried here at Oak Hill. She is assumed to be the first person and slave to be buried here.
When I was in my 20s, the love of my family started me to research where we came from. I wanted to know our history. I wanted to know something about the hills, the valves, the Carters, the woods. I just wanted to know where we came from.
Another post-emancipation document that we have access to is a deed dated 1879. In this deed, Oak Hill Cemetery is described as being a cemetery for the recently emancipated Black people. It describes it as being now in use on a main road. This is the first official county document that mentions the cemetery.
A few years ago, many years ago, Tricia Johnson came to my church. We had a Sunday school union. And she came there and she talked about history. She talked about Black history. I never thought that we would connect years later. We connected because she had this vision about the community cemeteries. And she got in contact with the pastor of my church, West Baldwin Baptist Church. And he got in contact with me because he knows how I am about history. I'm all about history. I'm all about the history of my church. I got in contact with Nadine Armstrong because Nadine had been working on the history, for years about our church, our cemetery, our community. I got in contact with her, and then the rest is history.
I actually got started with this program through Melissa Hill and Trish Johnson. Trish is the director of the Fluvanna Historical Society. And I've known Trish for a few years before she and Melissa approached me about working with this project for the Oak Hill Cemetery. And Trish just asked me if I would be willing to assist in finding who was buried here in Oak Hill. And of course, I told her I'd be more than happy to.
We've been working with Tricia. She has helped us tremendously with funding and to have our cemetery surveyed and to have the archaeologists come out to do all the work that they've done and to find about over 200 graves. All of this stems from Tricia Johnson and the vision that God gave her.
We have had quite a few graves discovered here in the last few years. They have had a few people come in and go over the property, and they have discovered at least 211 graves, and we assume there are quite a few more. We have been doing some research, and the research that we have been doing is through death certificates, birth certificates, census, and stuff like that. And we have found at least 110 names of slaves that are buried on the old side. Some of them may have been free, but a lot of them we feel were slaves that had been freed, during emancipation.
When I became director of the Historical Society 8 years ago, one of the first things I noticed was that in our archives where we have boxes and boxes of historic documents, there were only 2 boxes dedicated to Fluvanna's Black history. That was astonishing to me because for over 100 years, Black people comprised more than 50% of the population of this county. There had to be more. Where was it? And how did we go about finding this history, bringing it together, bringing it to the public's attention, giving it the respect that it deserved?
I began to do my genealogy. I started with myself, my mom, and I worked backward to find out my family roots. That led me to find out information that the Hills were enslaved in Buckingham. The Vowels were enslaved on the Cox's plantation in Bremo. I found out that my great-great-grandfather, Vincent Hill, was contracted out on the Glenarvan plantation. And we're standing right here now on Oak Hill Cemetery, which was a part of the Glenarvan plantation and Cleveland plantation.
My family actually were enslaved at Glenarvan here at the plantation, which is right around the road from here. And they also were some that worked on the Bremo farms in Bremo. I didn't realize that until while I was doing my research. I saw their names, but I only saw their first names, like Philip and William. And of course, back in that time, they only had their first names. They didn't have their second names on there. So the further I went through the research, the more I saw and the more I start realizing these are your ancestors. And when I first started doing the research, they were slaves. And the further I went along, they became free. They were, emancipated. And they started working on the farm and being paid for their work. And that's how I found out that they were my ancestors, because they started adding their last names and showing that they were being paid so much for the work that they were doing. And that made me feel a little better about, my ancestors. Because, when you see that your family were slaves and just thinking about what they had to go through back in those days, that have to really, do something to you. It really has to do something to you.
We reached out to friends in the Black community who were also really interested in learning more about their history, their personal history, the history of their community, and we went to work. Early on, we did 2 things. We created an exhibit around Black history, the county's Black history, in the Old Stone Jail Museum. And then we hosted a conference called Hidden Away, Local Resources for Black History in Fluvanna County, Virginia, in which we explored what we had and also what is in the Fluvanna Clerk's office. The conference was the beginning of the work that came after. So I think it's when the Historical Society became aware that there were 2 historic Black cemeteries in Fluvanna that were public cemeteries for at least part of their existence. And understanding that that was unusual because most cemeteries were either affiliated with churches or were private family cemeteries, we saw an opportunity to not only collaborate with the communities, with myself just as a facilitator, but seeing what you guys wanted to know and to do with those spaces, and then being able to access grant funding because of the unusual nature of those cemeteries, and we've been successful with that. So, for me, that was how it started, but the coolest part for me was coming here and meeting you guys. And
of course, I had a little more experience, but and it was something that I enjoyed. That was the main thing. Because that's the only thing that got me interested. I remember watching that movie Roots, and that's pretty much what got me interested in family history. And then going around Oak Hill Cemetery and Junius Hill, walking me through the old side, showing me the different graves and some of the people that were buried there. So.
And when was that?
That was back in 1969.
when I was born.
No, actually, that was more like 67, 68 because I had just come back from Germany.
And Junius Hill was who?
He was a caretaker of the cemetery.
All right, so he knew
Oh,
where
yeah.
everybody was buried, where the families
Yeah.
were,
He knew everything.
and so that's what kind of got you
Absolutely.
going.
Mm-hmm.
Wow.
The genealogy and my family history is just really important to me because I think about my family and my grandparents and how they couldn't read and write and what they did for us and what they did for our family. I'm just so grateful and I'm so appreciative for what they have done. And I think about all the others that came before them, you know, and what they went through, you know. And I just want to honor them. You know, I don't know what they look like. I don't know who they are as for in person, but just to see their names. And I'm just so grateful.
We got involved with Fluvanna Historical Society in late 2020. I got a call from Tricia, the current executive director, and she had asked us if we would be interested in documenting 2 cemeteries in Fluvanna County. And we had never done any comprehensive work in Fluvanna County. We'd worked on one project before and didn't know much about the history of the county. And in early 2021, we were hired by Fluvanna Historical Society to document 2 historically African American cemeteries, one in the West Bottom community called Oak Hill Cemetery, and the second in Columbia proper called Free Hill Cemetery.
When Fluvanna won the project from Tricia and the Historical Society, it was then our job to go into the field and start to look for these graves and to map the ones we found. So that was my principal role, was supervising that with a team of 2 others. Primarily identifying the graves initially, marking them with just what we would call a pin flag, just so we could record where they are, and then once we identified all the ones we could identify, we would go back and make a map and mark them on a map. So, and make any recordings of any particular details that might be of interest. Stones that had markings, stones at all. A lot of the graves did not have stones. So just recording kind of basic information about each grave.
Cemetery documentation in our field, in archaeology, is either invasive, you can dig in the dirt and uncover graves and markers, or they're non-invasive. And what we had proposed was a non-invasive survey, a reconnaissance level survey. And essentially that's walking over an entire cemetery and marking on the ground what we call surface features. They can be anything from a grave marker, a headstone, a footstone. It can be a cemetery fence. It can be what we call a grave slump, an area where the grave shaft was that has slumped a little bit. And those are the types of features that we look for in trying to identify the location of each grave and thereby defining the extent of the cemetery.
Primarily you're looking for stones that are well set in the ground, and the other primary marker is slumps, which is a shallow depression caused by the gradual settling of the fill in the grave. They can be quite distinctive. If you've seen enough of them, you recognize them fairly quickly. Stones are less common, but they are a good marker generally. Other things like basic plants, periwinkle was a plant that was planted in many cemeteries. Primarily it's a quick growing ground cover, so it's useful for that. Those kind of things, yucca plants, stuff that's non-typical natively. So a collection of all those factors tends to lead you to the cemetery identification.
On the old side of the cemetery, we have flags. They're little orange flags that mark each grave of the people that are buried there. When the guys did the survey and ran over the graves and found each grave, they put a marker, which was the orange flag, so we'll know where each person is buried. And that's how we know that there's 104 that we have found, but we know that there's 200 and some buried there. Matter of fact, there's 200 and some flags there. It's just 104 names that we've discovered. But there are 200 and some flags that are out there and sticking on each grave that have been found.
The document that we're looking at here contains the tax record of a man named David Ross, who owned all of the property from Columbia to Bremo Bluff. And in it are listed the names of 49 enslaved men and women. To be fair, we're not sure if this document includes the names of children or not. So I'm not going to say that he enslaved 49 people at that point. There may have been more. But to have their names gives us perhaps the names of the earliest people buried at Oak Hill Cemetery. Some of the names on this document are Squire, Dick, Brister, Stephen, Dahl, Rose, Crispin, Hannah, Sylvie, Peter, Adam, Milford. The list goes on, and there's some names that we recognize from later records, like Jenny and Jude and Aggie, that may have been there later on as well. There's another woman here named Sylvie, whose name appears in later records. So I think once we came up with the idea of having a large memorial that had the names on it of the people who were buried in unmarked graves, or at least all the names we could find, you took that and ran with it and did the research.
Mm-hmm. Yep, I did the research online and the funeral home, and I looked up the records of the death certificates and census, different records, and got the names of the people that were buried in Oak Hill. And I looked back at the years in the 1800s, early 1800s, up to the the early 1900s.
Mm-hmm.
I was drawn to that particular stone because of the white quartz that was on the side of the stone. And it reminded me of the stones that were put on the graves for enslaved people.
Mm-hmm.
I like the shape of it as well,
Yes.
the way it's shaped and the way it's going to set. I think it's going to be an attraction just from the way it's going to set with the shape.
I love the fact that it's a rough stone because it is reminiscent of the smaller field stone markers that were often on the graves of enslaved people or even people post-emancipation who just couldn't afford a headstone.
Steal away, steal away, steal away to Jesus.
Good morning to all. Thank you all for coming to our memorial dedication celebration to honor our ancestors. This is a glorious day that the Lord has given us. And we just can't thank him enough for what he have done and what he will do.
Stay here. My Lord, he calls me. He calls me by.
Christians may visit graves to remember loved ones and reflect on their lives, but also to renew their hope in the resurrection and the promise of eternal life. We find comfort in our mourning. Visiting graves can be a way to comfort ourselves and to comfort others, and to mourn the loss of our loved ones. We also contemplate the perspective that cemeteries can be a place of quiet contemplation. It's a good place to come and just sit and remember the good times of your foreparents.
Steal away, steal away to Jesus.
This headstone will serve as a place of peace and remembrance, where we all can come to feel close to our ancestors and find comfort in their memories. It is a reminder that while they are no longer with us in body, their spirit and influence remain ever so present in our hearts. It is a legacy of love, faith, and honor to us all. Thank you.
Stay here.
I'd say that the connectiveness and the relationships that I have formed doing the work that we have done in Oak Hill Cemetery and Free Hill Cemetery is probably one of the more valuable things that I take away from this professional and personal experience. The people I've met and that I've gotten to know over time are wonderful individuals. Projects like this, which emphasize history and heritage, and knowing that information and having it documented and acknowledged by the state and by the county is very important for community members.
remembrance or that connectedness that gets forgotten, I think, a lot of times from one generation to the next. Sometimes deliberately that people don't want to talk about the past because the past was not terribly pleasant. Sometimes it's just stuff that gets forgotten in the natural way of things. But you know, those cemeteries really kind of restore that connection, or help to restore that connection at least. That, you know, we are connected to this place and to the history of this place.
Today, over half of our efforts are directed towards Fluvanna County's Black history. We spend time in the communities finding out what they want to know and figuring out how we can support them in better understanding and recovering and preserving their own history.
I'm honored. I was honored. I'm honored. I was grateful for the opportunity to work on this project, because I've always wanted to know about my history and about my family, my ancestors. And even on this marker, there are some of my relatives on here. The Hills, the Colemans, the Vows. So it's an honor to have their name on this stone so that they can be recognized. I hope that the community realizes who they are and where they came from. Because if it had not been for our ancestors, we would not be where we are today.
This is my great-great-great-grandfather, William Farmer Sr. This is his son, William Farmer Palmer Jr. This is another son, Ethel Palmer. And there are some other Palmers on here that are also relatives of mine. And they started off as farmers and ended up, their last names ended up Palmer. I am so pleased and grateful with the completion of this project. And being a part of it has been so overwhelming and precious to me, you know. It's something that I've always wanted to do for a long time. You will always have a chance to research history, and you will always have a chance to make history. That's a part of life.